Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Nope. And this film, we center on siblings OJ and Emerald Haywood. They are professional horse trainers within movies. They are basically the people that, when you have animals in movies, they are basically the ones to try to tame them and show how to treat them and things like that and make sure that they are stable and all that stuff. But basically, they have been doing this for a while. They don't really feel like they've received the recognition that they have. And so one day when they come encounter with this UFO of sorts that was responsible for the loss of their father, they decide that they're going to take advantage of this. They're not going to hide in fear of this UFO. No, they're going to do what they can to document actual evidence of this UFO being a thing, which will hopefully get them the recognition that they've wanted all this time. So Nope, I was very excited for this film. Look, right off the bat, Jordan Peele, I think, is a fucking genius. I don't think I need to get into it. His past few films, Get Out, and especially Us, which I think is particularly overlooked, but for me is, I think, the best work he's done. He has just really established himself as such an interesting sort of talent within horror. He has these stories that he tells, and they're very original, they're very different, but he's able to insert social commentary that is so relevant, and you're able to latch on to the themes, and the more you think about them, the better the movies do become. And he really has shown throughout the years like how good he is at constructing that stuff. And so when Nope was first announced, I was very excited to see how this film was going to go. It looked like it had a considerably bigger budget than his other films. The talent that was attached to it was very interesting to me, and especially after that teaser was released, which is, I think, easily one of the best teasers I've ever seen. It tells you so much with saying so little. I was so pumped to see how this was going to turn out, and then when that other trailer came out that was a lot longer, gave us a better idea of what the movie was going to be. I was very excited to see how this film was going to turn out, what Jordan Peele was really going to bring to the table, and it became my most anticipated film of the entire summer, as well as my most anticipated films of the entire year. This just looked like the kind of like spectacle and different kind of horror film that we all really do crave for. And right off the bat, I will say, this is not a horror film. Do not go into this movie thinking it's a horror film. It is very much not. But with that being said, this film very much did not disappoint. Nope is yet another fantastic entry from Jordan Peele. Continues to show just how creative of a director that he really can be, but also goes in this other direction that we really haven't seen from him before, and I think really just enriches the talent that he has overall. But we're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast here. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest draws for pretty much anyone going into this movie. I think one of the things that people were most excited about was the cast that was announced, and virtually everyone kills it in this movie. I think everyone really is on their A game here. Let's first talk about Daniel Kaluuya, because, I mean, Jordan Peele is responsible for Daniel Kaluuya becoming the megastar that he has. He was in Get Out. He gave such an amazing breakthrough performance in that film. Everybody was raving about it. He even got an Oscar nomination. And to see the trajectory that he's on as an actor now is insane to me. It's one of the fastest trajectories I have ever seen for a breakthrough actor in that way. I mean, he's blown up considerably since 2017, and now he's looked at as one of the greats, and he's one of the greatest actors, one of the greatest character actors of this generation. And Nope really does remind us of why, because Kaluuya's playing a very different role than we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing him playing these very charismatic, very personable type characters that have a lot of personality to them, characters that are very energetic, characters that have a lot of passion. And OJ is very different than that. OJ is far more subdued. OJ is far more stoic in that way, and it's a very impressive performance because he is able to inject emotion into a character that often doesn't really show it. OJ is very calm. He doesn't like to show his emotions a lot, but he wears his heart on his sleeve. You can tell how much he cares, for his sister, but especially also for the horses, how much this really does matter to him, and he just does a really good job. He's very rootable in this film, especially as the movie goes on, and he starts to get deeper into this whole conspiracy of what's really going on here and what he really has to do. He really wants to be the one to kind of step up, especially after his father's died, he wants to be the one to step up and kind of take over. And I think he just does a really great job within this film. There are so many moments that this really just worked for me when it came to him. I think this was just a very different performance, but it was a great reminder of just how amazing of an actor Kaluuya can really be. The way that you can watch him and say, like, Judas and the Black Messiah, and he's giving such a passionate and empathetic performance, and just one that you find yourself just really latching onto. This guy that is filled with all of this, passion, all of this anger because of what's happened before, and him wanting to put a stop to things, and then contrasting that with somebody like OJ, who is just as emotional, but he does it in a much more subdued manner. It's just very impressive how one actor is able to do both of those things, and I just really loved what he was able to bring to the table in this film. I think this is such a fantastic performance for him, and I think once again, I think if you go into this movie, hoping to get a great Daniel Kaluuya performance, you're definitely going to be very satisfied. I really liked what he ended up doing here. But I gotta say, the star of this entire movie really does belong to Keke Palmer, who I think gives maybe the best performance I've seen from her yet. I mean, the second that Emerald comes onto the screen, you just absolutely fall in love with this character. She's so dynamic, she's so energetic in that way. She is somebody who has really big dreams, and you're really rooting for her as a result, and she has this personality surrounding her that is just absolutely infectious. Every time she's on screen, you really find yourself getting attached to her, but she also has easily, I think, the most emotional material to deal with, and as a result, Palmer's performance really does shine through here. There's a lot of unresolved feelings that she has, with what has recently happened with her father passing away, and she's reacting to it much differently than, say, OJ is, and I thought Palmer just did a really good job with channeling all of that, but also seeing her actual dreams of what she, her hopes and dreams of what she wants to achieve. What is she trying to gain from what the Haywood, siblings are doing? She has an entire different motive than this, and I just really liked what she ended up doing in this movie. I thought that she gave she had some really incredible moments here, and really just establishes herself as such a incredible talent. I've always been a fan of Palmer. I've always thought that she was someone that was a very entertaining presence, but this film really establishes her as a bona fide star, and I think moving forward, I really just hope Palmer is able to attain the roles that she was able to get here, because this was such a incredible performance from her. That she had so much to do in this movie. She's really funny to watch, but she's also someone that you really just find yourself, latching onto, and the chemistry between these two is just irresistible. You feel the sibling bond. It feels very tangible in the way. It's very magnetic with the way that it is done, and it is easily one of the best parts of the entire movie. It just feels very authentic in that way, and you really do feel like these two could be real siblings, and I thought they just did a really great job in this film. So I think the two central performances both are really strong here. But the rest of the actors also give some really great work. Brandon Perea is not going to be talked about a lot in this movie, and it's a shame because he's really good here as the character of Angel, this guy who he just works at this retail store, and the way that he's kind of caught up in all of this, and the way that he becomes, one of the key figures in this movie of helping out these characters. I just thought he did a really great job. A lot of the times, yeah, he can kind of have the reactionary role, but he plays it very well, and I thought that he did a really great job in this film. Michael Wincott is fantastic in this movie. Everything about this character I really loved. He is very different. He has a very specific passion when it comes to he's a cinematographer and things like that, and he has a very specific way of looking at films. He can be very eccentric in that way, but I feel like he's a character a lot of people are going to relate to, and I thought that he was just a really fun presence throughout this film. And then there's Steven Yeun, and I can't say too much involving his role in the movie because it will delve into spoilers. I know a lot of people have seen this movie already, but for the sake of people who haven't, I'm not going to say too much, but what I will say is I think he gave a really strong performance here. There's one moment with him especially that is easily one of the best moments within the entire film. I think that he has a, specific role in all of this, and I thought that he played his part very well in this film. I really like what he ended up doing in this movie. All of the acting here is really strong. Even actors that don't have a lot to do, like Obviously, Keith David is not in this movie a lot, but when he's there, he really does command the screen and demands your full attention when he's there. I think all the performances are very strong in this film. Okay, but let's get to Jordan Peele's directing, because look, we already know how good this guy can direct movies. We already know how well he is at building tension and things like that, which we will of course get into. But what really impresses me when it comes to Peele is how much he is really challenging himself with this movie. Like I said, going into it, you need to understand this is not really a horror movie. This film is much more of a sci-fi film. Peele is trying to channel a different kind of energy here. He's trying to dive more into sci-fi films and more so blockbuster type sci-fi films. And I think he does a really good job with that here. I mean, in terms of spectacle, he really does deliver in this movie, especially when it comes to the way in which he decides to go about the whole mystery surrounding everything. He kind of does it in a Jaws-like way where for a while you don't really know what this creature looks like. You don't really know, what's going on with the UFO. Why is the UFO acting the way that it is? And I thought that he did a really strong job with that. And the way that he constantly, kind of keeps you in the dark about what's going on, just as unsure as the characters, I thought was a really good way of telling the story. But what also really impressed me is just the sheer originality he brings to this film. He will constantly give you an idea of what's happening and then turns it on its head, and then you think you know what's going to happen and he turns it on its head. And he does such a good job of, I think, paying tribute to directors, the most obvious one being Spielberg. This film is very Spielbergian at points, but still being able to add his own energy to it. The movie is very epic, but it also can be very funny at points. I was laughing a lot during this movie. I was surprised by how much I was laughing. There's a lot of comedy inserted in this film, and a lot of it does work really well, but there also is that tension. The horror that he does bring to his other films, it's not gone in this movie. It's just not primarily a horror film, but there are horror elements to this film, and when they're there, they're done really well. I mean, it cannot be overstated enough how much of a master he is at building tension. There are so many scenes in this movie. There's one especially that is so impressive. It involves just a character walking through a hallway. That is all I will say. But the way he was able to build tension in a scene that honestly should not have worked, and yet it did, was so impressive to me. I love what he was able to do with this film. I love how he continues to challenge himself as a director. It really just shows how remarkable of a talent that Peele really is, that now 3 films in, yes, he has a style, but he's able to evolve from that. And it just really makes me excited to see what else this guy has up his sleeve. What other genres can he tackle? That's really what I want to see from him, because this film really does show he can do anything. And I really like what he ended up doing with the directing here. But the screenplay as well in this movie is fantastic. Now, the one thing I will say, going right into it, this is easily, I think, his most straightforward film to date. You have the plot of the movie, you have an idea of where it's going to go. That is generally where it ends up going, but I think he still is able to construct a lot of different ideas into this movie when it comes to the UFO and how it operates and things like that. I can't really get into it too much, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff that he does there, and that's something that I definitely really did appreciate. I think, like I said, the mystery surrounding everything I thought was really well done, and I think the screenplay is very strong as a result. All of these characters are affected by this in a different way. Obviously, with the siblings, it's because of the loss of their father and what's happened recently. When it comes to, Steven Yeun's character, he is affected by this in a completely different way that I'm not going to spoil, but it kind of adds this whole other layer to the film that I thought was really well done in that way. Brandon Pereira's character, the way that he's affected by this. Every single character in this movie is affected by what's going on, and I think that's something that he does a really good job with. And on the subject of characters, I've seen a lot of people say that this movie is on the weaker side when it comes to characters, that there's no character development in this movie, that the characters aren't the focus, and I will say, no, I don't think this film is as strong from a character perspective as, say, Us or Get Out, because those movies were more focused on the characters. This movie is much more focused around the event. but I still felt there was a lot to latch onto when it came to the characters in this movie, particularly when it comes to the idea of fame. The main two characters in this film, a lot of what they're doing is because of recognition. You know, they've been doing this for a long time, and they are frequently just kind of forgotten about. There's a scene very early on in the movie where they're shooting for this commercial, and the way everyone treats them, you know, you would just think they're onlookers. It doesn't seem like they are given much attention at all. Something you hear about in the teaser of this movie is, you know, their father and him being a part of, you know, is their great-great-grandfather and him being a part of the Haywood Ranch and things like that, and how a lot of people just didn't really remember that. And obviously, yes, there's a lot of racial commentary that Jordan Peele is trying to touch upon, but I think in a larger sense, this movie is really trying to talk about recognition and what people will do to get recognized in that way. And I think that's something that this film does touch upon very well. But also when it comes to the siblings themselves, like I said, there is a lot of unresolved tension between the two of them. For OJ, you know, he is very much trying to take up the responsibilities of his father. He wants to follow his footsteps. He wants to do everything that he can to make sure that the horses are cared for, and things like that. And I think that that was something they dived into really well when it came to his character. But for Emerald, she has different dreams in this movie. She has often felt like she hasn't been quite as recognized. And there's a scene especially that happens early on in the film and really gives you a sense of what her character is all about. What is she really trying to do? And I thought they did a really good job with that. So I do think that there is a lot going on with characters in this movie. It's just not as focused on as, say, a Get Out or an Us. And I think that might be the thing that might bother some people. But I think the themes in this movie are really well presented. Besides the idea of fame, there's a lot this movie has to say about surveillance and, you know, the idea of spectacle, and how at first this can be something that is very interesting. Someone can really, you know, want to know more about it, but it can also really possess you, and there's this negative side to it and how it can kind of corrupt you in that way. And I think that's something that this movie does a really excellent job with. The way they dive into the idea of surveillance, I think, is really well done. There's a whole other part of the movie kind of covering the idea of exploitation as well. I think those themes are touched upon very well in this movie. I can't really get into why, but I think that really is what this movie is trying to go for. And I think those themes are ones that it's going to take you a bit, for sure. I think out of all of Jordan Peele's films, this is easily, despite it being the most straightforward, this is easily the one where it did take me a bit to really formulate how I felt about it the most. I think you're going to come out thinking a lot, you know, about a lot of stuff. I had a friend who saw this movie and didn't like it initially. And then I tried to give them some ideas of what Jordan Peele was trying to bring to the table, and it changed her mind a little bit. She started to think differently. So I think that's something that will happen to a lot of people when watching this movie, is that they're going to come out with a lot of questions, but I think it's good that Peele did that. He wants you to kind of draw your own conclusions, and I think he does a really good job overall. And like I said, the movie is still kind of straightforward in that way. It is very much, you know, what you think it's going to be, and it does handle all of that very well. But there still are ways that Peele is able to bring these themes together, and I thought the way he was able to tell this story was done in a very unique way that I thought worked really well here. The other thing I do want to bring up is there is a subplot, like I mentioned in this movie, with Steven Yeun's character, and I've seen a lot of people say that this subplot was completely unnecessary. You could remove it from the film, it doesn't matter much, and on a surface level, I can kind of understand it, because the way that his plotline starts out, you know, it's something that is really takes you off guard. You're not expecting it to go in the direction that it does, and you want to know more about it. And then something happens, and we don't really go back to it after that. And for some, that could leave them very frustrated, but I feel like it's adding something else to the movie. I felt like what they ended up doing with that subplot really just kind of tied everything together really well. And while I was in the boat of, I don't really understand the relevance of this, the more I thought about it, the more it just really started to add to what the film is really trying to get at in terms of like social commentary and things like that. I think all of that is really well done. So I think the writing here is still very strong in this movie. There's a lot of unexpected directions and nice little twists and turns that he ends up going, that Peele ends up going with this film. So I think the writing here is still really well done in this film. Very strong screenplay for sure. But we gotta talk about the cinematography in this movie because, oh my god, in terms of spectacle, Peele knows this is one of the big reasons people are coming to see this movie. They want to see what he was able to construct, and what he was able to do, I am just absolutely blown away by. When it comes to the effects in this movie, everything just looks so real in that way. It is just absolutely stunning to look at when you see the just characters looking up at the sky, but not even just looking up at the sky. The way nighttime looks in this movie. Peele recently revealed that he filmed a lot of these scenes during the day, and I don't know how he was able to do that. I don't know how he was able to accomplish some of the things that he did in this movie, but it is so well handled, particularly in the third act of this film. I mean, they just go all out in terms of the big set pieces, in terms of the crazy visuals, the heightened tension. All of that is so well done here. But also just the world building of everything when it comes to the Haywood Ranch. It just feels so tangible in that way. But also the look of the eventual UFO, and we actually start to get a glimpse of what it actually looks like, is just so well constructed. I loved what was done here in terms of cinematography. The cinematographer of this film is already someone that I've admired for a while in Hoyt van Hoytema. I think he is one of the best cinematographers working today. He's done cinematography for movies like Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, Ad Astra, Her, but this film really just reminds us how much of a master he is in terms of visuals, what he's able to do. Everything just looks so distinctive. Everything looks so real in that way. And I think the way he's able to place you into this situation in a way that feels so seamless, I just think is so impressive. So I really love what he ended up doing in terms of the cinematography here. It is easily some of the most striking imagery of the entire year. There's one scene in particular. It involves Daniel Kaluuya riding a horse, and my god, it was one of the most breathtaking sequences I have seen all year. When I think about this movie, that honestly is the sequence I keep coming back to. But there are multiple scenes in this movie that I just don't know how he was able to pull off in the way that he did. There's one scene in particular, that I'm thinking about, and I just don't know how he was able to pull it off. It's so impressive the way all of that turned out. I think that, like I said, the homage is definitely there in terms of cinematography as well, but it still feels like its own thing, and I liked what he ended up doing there. Let's talk about the score in this movie, because I've talked about before how just amazing of a composer Michael Abels really is, and I think this is one of his best scores to date, because what he was able to do with the score in this movie is he completely just subverted your expectations. The very foreboding and haunting scores that you've heard within Get Out and Us, they're here, but there's also this sort of more epic, almost Western feeling to it. And I really like that a lot. He did a really good job of making sure this film had its own voice, that it didn't just sound like a, replica of what he did in Get Out and Us. When you listen to the score in this movie, it really, even out of context, it really does fit the general vibe of what they are going for. And I just really liked what he ended up doing with the score in this film. It added to the tension. It added to the suspense. I really love the score a lot in this film. I mean, Abels is just on fire. I'm always so blown away by his work as a composer, but this is probably some of his most impressive to date, because it is one of the biggest examples I can see of a composer that has a very specific sound find a way to completely reinvent themselves. And I was just so impressed by what he was able to do here. He really found a way to make sure that this score intertwined with the movie itself, and I was very impressed by that. Something else that I would be absolutely remiss if I did not bring up is the sound design in this movie, which is otherworldly in this film. The way that sound plays a key role into this movie, I cannot really get into, but every time that this UFO appears, it's because of the way the sound is done that made it so effective. And I really like the way they ended up utilizing the sound design in this movie. They really did use it to great effect. And that just continued to add to, again, just the tension throughout this movie, that anticipation that you have. I think the sound design plays a really big role in that. And I really liked what they ended up doing with it here. The editing in this film also, I think, is very well done here. It's very well paced. The movie is over 2 hours, but it really does fly by for me. I've seen this movie 3 times now, and honestly, each viewing, the movie goes by faster because I always, not just because I'm finding, different nuances and things like that, and there's more to latch onto, there's more clarity in terms of what the film is going for. But I also think just in terms of the pacing, I think this is easily one of his best paced movies to date. The film is divided into different chapters, and I think that also works really well in telling the story that he is. So I thought that the editing was very strong in this film, and the way the movie ends as well was honestly kind of perfect. It's another ending where I think people are going to have some questions about how the movie really did wrap up, but for what he is going for, the way that he ends up calling back to certain things that happened earlier in the movie, I was just very impressed by the way this film ended up wrapping up. I thought that it was probably the best way he could have done it. With that being said, this film is not perfect. There are a couple things that do end up bringing it down. First of all, I will be honest, while there are things that I still that I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, there are still some things that I'm a bit fuzzy on. There are some scenes that I don't really understand the importance of. There are some characters that pop up that I don't really understand the full importance of, and I think that is something that I think could be fixed within repeated viewings. But my real issue with this movie, the only thing that really does bring it down, unfortunately, is actually with our main character in OJ, who I do think is a good main character, but I think he had the potential to be a great character, because I think there is some things that we just need to see a little bit more of when it came to his connection to his father and how much he depended, how much he bonded with him, the initial back and forth that these two had. There is something that's revealed about him concerning Emerald that I just wish we could have dived into a little bit more, because I think if we did, it would have made the film even more impactful than it really was. I think his character was just missing a few moments, and I think if they had given us those moments, I would have felt just as drawn to him as I did to Emerald. I still liked OJ a lot as a character, but I did feel at points like there's a little bit more we need to see when it comes to his character and what he's really, been going through all this time. And I think they could have dived a bit deeper into that. But with that being said, it really does not take away from just how incredible of a film this really is. Nope is the perfect example of finding a way to, retain what has already worked within your style as a director, but also find a way to build upon it and kind of create this new side of you that we really haven't seen before. And that's something that Peele was able to do so well within this movie. It's such an ambitious film. He really dives more into the science fiction aspects here. Yes, there are a lot of homages to directors like Spielberg and things like that, but the film still has its own identity. There are plenty of directions it goes into that really did take me off guard. Some excellent performances, especially from Keke Palmer, who I think really asserts herself as a real star in this film. I think everyone's really going to be talking about her when they watch this movie. It's very energetic. It's really draws you in. It's very exhilarating in that way, especially in the third act. It really does go to those places that you're hoping it does go to. There is a lot of deeper themes and things like that I think is going to be hard for some people to grasp at first, but I think the more you think about this movie, the more that you really do end up loving it, or at least that's how I've been. This is a film where the more I unravel it, the more I try to piece things together, the more I just really end up falling in love with what Peele ended up crafting here. An excellent score from Michael Abels, some absolutely breathtaking cinematography. Nope really is exactly what I think you would want from a summer blockbuster. It does a great job of taking those spectacles and those thrills and really turning it on its head in a way that we really haven't seen before. It's a lot of different things. It can be very scary at points. There's a lot of tension in this movie that I think is built upon very well. There are some really funny moments. There is some really good, sci-fi that's applied to this film, but by and large, this is a very original film, and I think it's really cool how still 3 films in, Peele has found a way to continue to have that sheer originality. Yes, there are films that you can harken back to and say this is kind of similar to that, but the way he tells his stories, it's just unlike many other directors out there, and I think that's what really latches you on him as a director, and I think is what's going to make him continue to be a household name for many years to come. I just really liked what Nope was going for. It's different from his other 2 films. It might not be as character driven as his other movies, but I think it still really does deliver in pretty much every aspect that you're going for. There are many moments that left me on the edge of my seat. There are many things I'd love to talk about, but I do think it is a movie that is best to go into not really knowing a ton and really finding out for yourself what this movie is really going for, because it really is something special that I think is something that we really haven't seen Peele cover before, and I think it is that much better because of it. So overall, I just really love Nope a lot, and I am going to give it an A-. But anyways, guys, in my review of Nope, let me know what you guys saw this movie at all, left your thoughts on it. Like I said, I know this movie's been out for a while now, but I'm really just trying to do what I can to be considerate to those that haven't seen it before. That's why I didn't dive into spoilers or anything like that. But if you want to hear more about that, you can always PM me, whether that be on YouTube, DM me on Twitter, all that fun stuff. I will try to, tell you what I think about all the crazy stuff that happens in this movie that I know you want me to talk about whenever. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.